Thank you for coming today. And my first job is to tell you where the restrooms are, which are to your right and go around and go over there. It's in another building, but it's real close. Today we will have a discussion about bullying and suicide with a panel of experts, and our moderator will be Antonia Alvarez, the director of our Youth Suicide and Bullying Prevention Project. So let me tell you a little bit about Antonia. She has a master's degree in social work, and she also has a degree in theater. For more than 12 years, she worked with at-risk youth, including homeless youth, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender youth, youth in rural communities, Native Alaskan youth, and youth involved in the juvenile justice system. 3 years ago, Antonia came to work with us at MHA and began to create our youth suicide prevention program. She did this by conducting a series of focus groups with foster youth, homeless youth, youth who had been in gangs, and youth in faith-based communities. Based on these conversations, Antonia developed a training curriculum to help youth, teachers, staff, and parents learn about suicide prevention and learn how to help. She has conducted trainings to thousands of youth and adults during the past 2 years. She draws on her theater background and makes her trainings very interactive. Participants do role plays based on real-life scenarios. They answer quizzes, they do theater exercises, and they brainstorm the ways they find strength and resilience. Last year, it became clear that bullying was a major factor in depression and suicide and was epidemic in our schools. So Antonia developed a major bullying prevention component into her trainings. So now let me turn the program over to Antonia.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's really very exciting to see so many faces in the crowd today, and we have such a wonderful group of panelists that I don't want to spend too much time myself talking. But thank you, Maria, for the wonderful introduction. It's my pleasure to do this work. The people I've gotten to know in our communities are so strong and vital and have many, many resources. So I'm going to turn it over to 4 wonderful resources that we have in our community. And I'll briefly introduce them to you, but I'd like them to share a little bit of themselves for you as well. So first, I'll introduce you to Nancy Kern, who works at the Department of Health.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nancy Kern. I work for the Department of Health in the Injury Prevention and Control Program. I'm the Suicide Prevention Coordinator. So a lot of my work is focused on bullying and harassment prevention. And just to be brief, I actually have been doing this work for close to 20 years now, because before I came into this position about 1.5 years ago, I worked for the Department of Health in HIV prevention, and that's when I originally got into the area of bullying prevention, advocating for LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender youth, and maybe we can talk a bit more about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. So a really, really wonderful resource and an old friend. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
And next, we'd like to introduce Senator Suzanne Chun Oakland, who's a familiar face to most of us, and she's been doing some unbelievable advocacy for our youth for a very long time, and this year has taken a very firm stance on bullying. So thank you so much, Susie Chun Oakland. Say a word about yourself. Yeah.
Hi everyone. I've served in the legislature for quite some time, 21 years, but I think my first experience with bullying was actually in elementary school, where I saw a really tall classmate of mine being bullied by a very short classmate of mine, and I just couldn't imagine someone being cruel in that way. So I actually spoke up for him and just talked really fast and told the bully, please don't do that. And he actually listened, which I was quite surprised. But this has been, I think, one of the top priorities of the Hawaii State Legislature's Keiki Caucus for, I believe, 7 or 8 years. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. A long-term advocate. That's what we need to hear. It's very good. Next, we have Dr. Karen Umemoto, who's coming to us from UH today and is a fabulous trainer of trainers and of teachers and of educators all over the state of Hawaii. So thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, aloha. Just a little bit of quick background. Actually, I started as a YMCA camp counselor, and then eventually did a lot of youth-related activities, and then eventually ended up researching gang violence. So, okay. So yeah, I did. I studied gang violence in LA, where I was born and raised, and moved here about 13 years ago. My daughter here was bullied in public school, and my niece was bullied to the point where she had to switch schools. So bullying has been part of my own personal experience as well. So I'm really glad to be here, and thank you for organizing this.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. And finally, we have Sarah Kainipono Banks, who's coming to us also from UH, who is doing really amazing creative advocacy with many, many schools and children all over the state of Hawaii. And she's going to tell you a lot about her campaign for creating Pono School. So, Sarah Banks.
Aloha mai. I'm a fourth generation local. I am a graduate of Kainalu Elementary, Kalaheo Inter when it was an intermediate, and Kailua High 72 grad. My father's grandfather was a banana inspector. My father's grandfather was an owner of a photography shop in Honolulu. And my dad, Paul Banks, construction manager for Hawaiian Dredging. And then there is 5 of us in our family. And my mom is from Missouri, so it's the Show Me state. So we have, I'm an interesting mix of someone that really is keiki o Aina. I am from Hawaii, and yet I have Caucasian cultural roots as well. But my love is video, and for many, many years I have been producing videos, and it's always been about social issues. And so from the start of public access in the early 70s, I was producing a weekly show called Mars Video, which was and it was all about women's issues. Then it became about water rights. Then it became about indigenous rights and gay and lesbian issues, and then it became about HIV. Everything that I have done, and currently now I'm with the Center on Disability Studies. So when I look at kind of my history of being the girl, being the gal, being the woman now behind the camera, it's always been about social issues that I felt very deeply about. And it's all been about human rights and issues.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. So we have a very vivacious panel of lots of very talented individuals coming to us with lots of different kinds of experience. So hopefully we're going to have a fabulous discussion. Thank you all for being here again. I'm going to share a few introductory statistics with you so that we can get the ball rolling discussing bullying in Hawaii. What does bullying actually look like in our state? Recent reports show that 1 out of 13 youth in our schools have been threatened with a gun or a knife on school property 1 or more times. And more than 10% of Hawaii's youth report being in a physical fight on school property at 1 or more times. So this is the beginnings of talking about physical bullying. So we're going to talk about many different types of bullying throughout the session, and we'll have each person kind of respond to that, but we'll run through the statistics first. 1 out of 14 of Hawaii's youth did not go to school because they were fearful of what was going to happen on the way to school. And in fact, we actually have the highest rate in the nation of girls who are scared to go to school and actually stay home 1 day out of the month. This is happening in all of our classrooms across the state. These statistics are from private and public schools. Are certain students being targeted? We've already heard a little bit about lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender students. Is that happening for us here in Hawaii? Yes, there was a 40% increase in students saying that they were harassed because they were perceived to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender in schools. Nationally, the statistics are very, very shocking. 84% report they've been verbally harassed, and 39% report being physically harassed in school. And again, we think this is probably underreported because we don't have very many good statistics about lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender students in our high schools and middle schools yet. What about cyberbullying? We've heard a lot about it in the news. Is it actually happening here in Hawaii? Yes. 2010 study of high school students in Hawaii who had been victims of cyberbullying showed that they were 2.5 times as likely to binge drink and smoke marijuana, twice as likely to report depression, and more than 3 times as likely to attempt suicide, directly drawing the link between being victimized by a cyberbully and contemplating suicide. So what is the impact of all these bullying statistics on our students? Feelings of fear, shame, low self-esteem and anxiety, drug and alcohol abuse, risky sexual behaviors, self-mutilation, self-harm and cutting, eating disorders, declining physical health. We often see actual stomach aches and headaches, physical symptoms begin to manifest in students who are bullied for a long period of time. And finally, we see depression and suicidal ideation growing, especially if the bullying is getting very severe around middle school and high school. How does this relate to teen suicide in our state? We've heard the word bully-cide used a lot in the last year or two. It's a challenging word for me, and I hope maybe somebody will talk about it as well. To me, it implies that there's a direct causal relationship between being bullied and wanting to die. And while those feelings may be associated, I don't think it's necessarily helpful in our schools to tell kids, you've been bullied, you may want to think about suicide. I think we need to separate that connection a little bit for them. That being said, do we need to talk about suicide in relationship to bullying in Hawaii? Yes. Suicide is the second leading cause of death of our teenagers. We have the highest rates in the nation of students thinking about suicide, planning suicide, and attempting suicide. We have double the national rate of teen suicide attempts. And unfortunately, our neighbor islands are at highest risk. Maui County, Kauai, and Big Island almost double the rates of Oahu. So that brings us to where we are today. What else do we need to be talking about? What kind of stories are you hearing? What major questions do people have about bullying? And any reactions that you have to statistics. I just want to get some general feedback from the panelists to start the ball rolling. So what kinds of stories are we hearing? How common is this really? Do these statistics match up?
Yeah, this gives me an opportunity just briefly to talk about a report that I was involved with. I worked with a group called the Safe Schools Community Advisory Committee. It was a group that was developed by the Department of Education to address bullying and harassment in Hawaii schools. This was a group of community-based people who were brought together in 2005, and we came out with this report in 2007, Recommendations for Addressing Harassment in Hawaii's Public Schools. It's got 3 overarching recommendations, and it's got 33 other recommendations. If you would like a copy of this, can you please see me after? I'd be happy to email you a copy. But when we're talking about stories, one of the things that this report contains is stories from the front lines, from students in Hawaii's public schools who have been harassed or bullied. I just want to read one of these briefly to you. It's a national origin story. It's one of several stories in here that provide the justification for the report. A 16-year-old girl who moved to Hawaii 2 years ago from the Philippines tearfully described how in one of her classes at Oahu High School, a small group of boys would mock her and mimic her accent every time she stood in front of the class to recite or give a report. This happened daily for weeks until she couldn't take it anymore and decided never to say another word in her class. As a result, she began to fail the class because she was not meeting the requirements to participate in class discussions and give oral reports. She noted sadly that her teacher never intervened even once to stop the harassment, and sometimes smiled when the boys made fun of her. This is one of thousands or more stories in Hawaii schools over the years, and that's what we're here to address today. Thank you.
Yeah, I've certainly heard similar stories. I think probably we all have. Unfortunately, I don't think that's changed too dramatically in the last several years.
As I had mentioned earlier, the Keiki Caucus has made this a top priority for a number of years. It's through the Children and Youth Summit that we have every October, where young people, as well as children, advocates, have come to the legislature and helped us prioritize different areas of concern. And I think bullying and cyberbullying has been very important to the young people in particular because they see it every day. I know there is a report. I only had made 40 copies of it, but I will send to Antonia the electronic version. What we did was prepare a report for you for this particular panel discussion, and it defines some of what bullying and cyberbullying is. It also does talk about the statistics. So it's pretty alarming. In terms of students that are harassed at school, in the 2010 report, almost half of the children had reported that they had been verbally harassed at school in the past 12 months. That's really high. 22% had reported that they physically were harassed at school in the past 12 months. And 30% of the students actually reported their property being stolen or damaged in school. That was for high school. For middle school, 58% of the students reported verbally being harassed, and almost 40% of the students had been physically harassed. 34% had their property stolen or damaged. And for the area of cyberbullying, 74.9% of the students actually knew what cyberbullying is. And so of the high school students, they said 31% of them had experienced cyberbullying, and 18.4% in the middle schools experienced cyberbullying. So
Senator Shanolkin,
pretty
can you
significant.
define cyberbullying for us?
Oh, sure. Cyberbullying is a little bit different from bullying in that it's using technology. And so children and youth who are cyberbullied are basically sending hurtful or mean text messages, spreading rumors or lies via the email or social network sites, or creating websites, videos, or social media profiles of individuals to embarrass or humiliate them. This is just young people. Adults are doing this to adults as well. And we just passed a law this year where a person was basically a photo of her without clothes was placed on a porno site. And basically then her workplace information and everything was put on there so people actually could contact her. She had no idea, except she started getting all these calls from folks. And then I think in California there was an instance of a lady's former, I'm not too sure, spouse or boyfriend, basically doing something similar, creating adding to a website and saying that this person, the female, her dream was to have her home broken into and raped. And it actually happened.
Oh my gosh. Which brings up the point, why is cyberbullying so much more harmful than the rest of the other types of bullying, which we've heard a little bit about, physical, verbal.
Right. It can go, I mean, throughout the entire globe.
Right, it spreads very quickly. There's anonymity, and then there's this sort of viral possibility that becomes very damaging.
Right.
Sure. Who are the students being targeted in Hawaii? What do we know? We've already heard a little bit that national origin comes up. We've talked a little bit about our own experiences. Is there anything we can share about what we know in terms of are certain groups being targeted more than others?
I don't know how, I think especially gay, lesbian, transsexual, population, of course, is one of the targeted groups. But I think that more than targeting, it's pretty pervasive. 50% of people, students, feel that bullying is a problem and that they've had encounters. And so I think the issue is more to try to understand what are the forms of bullying, because there are some types of bullying that we may not even recognize as bullying. So the 4 usual forms are physical, verbal, sexual, and psychological. We catch the physical because you see people kind of hitting each other, beating each other up, roughhousing a little too much. We hear the verbal, people name-calling and taunting, threatening other people. The sexual ones are a little more subtle. Sometimes they're sexual gestures, name-calling, exposure, touching, more subtle ways that a lot of girls may not be able to express because they feel shame. But that's another form. And the other is psychological. Spreading rumors, manipulating social relationships, extorting people, intimidating people, playing with their minds is another form. So anyone really can be victim of any of these types of forms of bullying or violence. And I think that there's really a difference between forms of bullying that you see among younger kids and then older kids.
So of those 4 types of bullying that you described, do you think there are some that linger in elementary and intermediate and others that get worse as we age?
Yeah, I think you see more of the sexual stuff at the older age.
Yeah.
For girls, you see more of the psychological bullying, more so than the boys, where you see more of the physical bullying.
And then the girls, they're as the perpetrators as well as the victims of
Yeah.
the psychological bullying. Yeah.
But it crosses all boundaries.
In my experience, what I'm seeing is it's middle school. Middle school seems to be where it's far more rampant than any place else. We are dealing with it in elementary, but middle school is a very interesting thing that happens. One is we've got the raging hormones kicking in. 2 is that a lot of the students from K through 5 or K through 6 have grown up together. They know one another, they're friends. But when they get thrown into middle school, all of a sudden there's this new student, new group from different areas, and that's when things just go ballistic. So it's really, and Kamehameha Schools really identified that middle school we had to hit them, and they created a beautiful cultural response for middle school, and it's called Eolapono curriculum. And actually, we continue to use it. Alulike, our partners, and Center on Disability Studies, we continue to use these lessons and the curriculum because they're wonderful and they're powerful. But it's all around middle school. And then in high school, I think once you've survived intermediate, the kids that are just really off the chart probably don't make it into high school. It starts taming down. 9th graders are just so freaked about being in school. A lot of schools have really done their first day, it's only 9th graders. Kailua High does that. Yeah. Many other schools, to get them feeling like, this is their new school, this is their new home. And these are the ropes before the scary 10th, 11th, and 12th graders come in. So,
We've heard that the ninth graders are actually at greatest risk for suicide because of this transition period. Well, probably ninth graders and also 18-year-olds. So people who are transitioning in and out of these really troubling...
Transitions are very tough for a lot of our youth.
And I think it's interesting what you said too about the students who all grow up together in elementary, right? But many of those same students go to the same intermediate and the same high school. I talked to a boy who'd been bullied by the same people since he was like 6, right? So talk about a survivor. He's got 10 years from the same group of bullies hassling him for the same reasons, and he's already been through this whole cycle of suicidal ideation, planning an attempt before he was 14 years old. But you're right, by the time he was 16, he was done. I mean, he was ready to fight because he's already learned, right, for 10 years how to survive that. Sorry, did you have another one, Nancy, about a particular target group?
I actually was going to just refer to this study. I was looking back in some of the materials that I have. This, I believe that Antonia mentioned a couple of pieces of data from this study. It's called The Impact of Cyberbullying on Substance Use and Mental Health in a Multi-Ethnic Sample. It was in Maternal Child Health Journal, September 8, 2010. Again, I will send this along with this and a couple of other materials to Antonia if you're interested. I did want to mention, as far as, so this was done by Deb Gabert. She's a woman in the Department of Psychiatry at the John A. Burns School of Medicine, and some of her colleagues. So this is a peer-reviewed journal. It was a lot of work for them to get this piece, this study, into this journal. And this was done with a cohort of 881 students from 2 high schools in Hawaii. So this was a Hawaii-based study. And what they found was, this is related to cyberbullying, significant ethnic differences were found with Filipinos reporting more phone cyber control than Samoans, Caucasians, or than Samoans. Then Caucasians, Filipinos, and Samoans were more likely to report cyberbullying victimization over the web than Native Hawaiians. Native Hawaiians were more likely to report substance abuse of alcohol and marijuana than other groups. Samoans were more likely to feel badly about themselves when cyberbullied than others. Girls reported more cyberbullying victimization from text messages and from the web, anxiety symptoms, and suicide attempts. You may know that although males complete suicide more than females, women and girls attempt suicide more often. There was a significant interaction between gender and ethnicity for cyber control using the web, in which Filipino and Native Hawaiian females were more likely to be cyber controlled than Filipino and Native Hawaiian males.
When we're talking about cyber control, then, are we assuming that we're talking about a dating relationship and the use of technology to perpetrate dating violence?
It could be that situation. I think it's any situation where someone is using, there are so many different modes and methods to use when you're cyberbullying someone, and when you are the person who is the bully and this victim feels vulnerable because of what you're doing, I think that is certainly one instance of cyber control.
In the work that I do, I'm lucky to be able to visit multiple sites across the state, many schools, many different community settings and neighborhoods, as well as get a lot of phone calls and emails and faxes. And what I have seen over time is there are, of course, the peer-to-peer kinds of bullying and cyberbullying between children or teenagers, ethnicity, being poor or homeless, being too wealthy, those that have mental illness, those that have some kind of physical or intellectual disability, people that are athletes, that are actually bullied by their coaches. I've gotten a number of calls related to that. In terms of teachers swearing at children, custodians, firsthand I see.
Wow.
So it's pretty pervasive, adults and children. So we really need to check ourselves too.
One of the things that we've been talking a lot about is what is our role in bullying? I mean, what role do we play? Do bystanders contribute to bullying? What is a bystander? Anybody want to talk a little bit about the bystander role?
Well, that's why I mentioned at the very beginning.
Yeah.
From a little girl, you can do something.
Right. So,
You basically speak up and say it's not right.
and by not speaking up, I mean, unfortunately, the message that we're trying to get across and maybe not getting across is that by not speaking up, students and parents and teachers are actually contributing to the violence that we're seeing in the schools. So we want to try to give you some tools and strategies to give your teachers, give your social workers, and give your kids so that they can be, and parents, yeah, so that they can begin to become better advocates instead of passive bystanders, right? So I think I'm going to ask each panelist to share a little bit about the interventions. Each one of them offers a very unique perspective in terms of interventions and prevention strategies that they've been working on. So I'd like each one of them to share a little piece about what they've been doing over the last year or several years. I think we can start with Nancy Kern because she'll give us a little bit of the history through the Safe Schools.
Well, I have a brief, can you hear me okay? I have a brief story to tell you. Back in 1997, I was working for the STDA prevention branch of the Department of Health, and I was flying for work from Honolulu to Maui, and I had back in the day, the Honolulu Advertiser with me, and I was reading how the Board of Education was having a meeting in a couple of evenings on Oahu to pass Administrative Rule Chapter 19 that would cover harassment and bullying of different classes of students. So it named students with disabilities, students of minority ethnic groups, different groups of students like that. But I noticed that what was missing, and again I've been working in HIV for a period of time, were sexual minority youth, as we called them then, LGBT youth. Where were they? Why were they not protected by Chapter 19? So, to make a long story short, it took 5 years of unbelievably hard work between 1997 and 2001, and this was in the day before emails and texting. So everything was done by fax or phone calls. So what we had to do was just organize people statewide who believed that sexual minority youth, LGBT youth, should be included under Administrative Rule Chapter 19. We worked with the media. We went and met with Board of Education members. We had community groups that met on each of the islands, because what happened was, when we went 2 nights later, after I got everybody together and we went and gave testimony at the Board of Education on adding LGBT youth to Chapter 19, the whole process came to a screeching halt for 5 years. Now, I know that's hard to believe, but that's what happened. So we then had to work very, very hard for the next 5 years, and it went out because they were making a change in adding LGBT youth to the groups of youth who would be protected. Then it had to go out to 10 public hearings statewide, so we helped organize those. Bottom line, on Kauai in June 2001, there was a very close vote of the Board of Education to adding sexual minority youth to Chapter 19, and it succeeded. So that was like one of our greatest successes. Since that time, we have continued to work for the Board of Education, with the Board of Education, on changing certain rules. Chapter 19 was an administrative rule, so it was like it had the teeth of an actual law, but there are others. There's a policy, I think it's 4211, that covers harassment and discrimination of youth, including sexual minority youth. However, it does not have the teeth of a law. There's another Chapter 41 that, because they're going to add sexual harassment related to sexual orientation, that now has to go out to public hearings. So, and then meanwhile, we were part of this Department of Education Safe Schools Community Advisory Committee. So we've been busy, but the thing about it is, it's not a quick fix. And what you really need, I mean, there are things, I think there are quick fixes. The Senator and I were talking earlier that it is possible tomorrow to go into a classroom and make changes that will make that classroom safer for youth who are at risk. But you also need the policies to back it up, and that takes time. Believe me, we know, we've experienced it. So that's kind of some of what we've been doing.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. You've been doing this work for a long time, and unfortunately, it doesn't sound that different today, but
Slightly.
very important. I mean, without that step, that really laid the foundation for the beginnings of this work. So you want to share a little bit about, Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about the Creating Photo Schools and how that's happening now, or should we stick with the policy end for a second? Maybe. Okay, well, why don't we, maybe Senator Tenopan can talk a little bit about where we are today. I mean, we heard where we started in 2001.
For a number of years, the Keiki Caucus, in their legislative package, had introduced resolutions encouraging the Department of Education, Department of Health, and others to develop policies. And the young people were still saying, even with that in place, bullying still occurs. This year, we had introduced 3 measures in our Keiki Caucus package. And you can go to the Hawaii State Legislature website to actually read the bills that we've introduced. One bill is the Senate Bill 919, and it has a companion bill, House Bill 688. That basically was something that Nancy Kern, one of our Board of Education members and Keiki Caucus members, worked on to help strengthen the bullying and cyberbullying policies and procedures within the Department of Education, but also established, if it had passed, for the first time, a misdemeanor. Because there's, for some of the consequences, well, I don't know if there's much consequences currently, and so we're actually looking at some of the actions of bullying and cyberbullying, if it met certain thresholds, actually having a more strict penalty. I know among the students, their first preference in any legislation is that we have the prevention education, as well as if someone actually bullies or cyberbullies, that they go through some kind of sensitivity or other type of program so that they really understand what kind of impact they have through the verbally harassing or physically harassing or other types of bullying or cyberbullying. What came out of the legislature this year is House Bill 688, and it really morphed into something that basically asked the Department of Education and Board of Education to monitor closely the policies that they had adopted through administrative rules, and to be able to report back to the legislature. So it really got watered down. We did receive concerns from various community groups, and that is also on the website. If you look at those bills, you'll see the testimony from different community groups. This summer, we are hopeful that we can actually relook at the bill, work with those that had expressed concerns, and see if we can pass something next year. We are also having, and Karen can give a little more detail, Keiki Caucus, which is a lot of people actually in this room and elsewhere, as well as legislators, really wanted to get trained themselves so they could actually, on a personal basis, be able to implement wherever they're working or wherever they're providing community service. So that training is going to occur on July 12th. It will be at the state capitol in conference room 225. And it will start at 12 o'clock and end at 2 p.m. So you're very welcome to join
And
us.
Senator, this is a free training.
It is a
Open
free
to the
training
community.
provided by Karen, the university folks that develop some curriculum. And later on, I would like Alan Silva, who actually is on vacation, to come up. He took some time because he feels very passionate about bullying and cyberbullying and has really done a fabulous job with low touch, low technology, but very effective curriculum that he's implemented already to date that has helped with bullying and many other social issues that we are faced with.
Great. Thank you, Senator. So a little bit of a snapshot into where we are today. And again, many of us have the report to refer back to if you have additional questions. I think, Karen, you tell us a little bit about the training that you're going to offer and a little bit about the community-based strategies that you're going to recommend.
You know, we've run a 3-day training for the DOE as part of their professional development program on bullying prevention called Safe Schools and Communities. It's a practical toolkit of strategies and actions. And we're going to take a sampler of the 3-day course, pack it into these 2 hours at the Keiki Caucus meeting. It's really for practitioners who work with youth. It's with myself and Allison Colby, who's been a social worker at Farrington High School for 20 years, and she's going to run through a lot of hands-on activities that you could do with kids and present her kind of general framework and approach. And then Alice, and along with Anya Busaki, who's a psychologist with the Coalition for a Drug-Free Hawaii. So 3 of us are running the training. Senator Oakland has kindly set it up, and it's free for everybody. So July 12th, 12 to 2 at the Capitol. What I'd like to do is, how many of you actually provide services to youth or work directly with youth? Okay. Or work with organizations who work directly with youth?
Great, good.
Okay. What I'd like to talk about more is, people talk about effective practice. You know, what are the evidence-based programs? And I'm not going to talk about that. There's plenty of information about that. On the back table, I've put together a yellow sheet with online resources, including websites that have whole databases of evidence-based programs. But what I'd like to share with you a little bit is based on our research, based on our practice, based on the training we've given, and based on the work that we've done for the past 3 or 4 years with Kailua High School and the community groups in Waimanalo, kind of an acronym that kind of summarizes kind of what I've been working with the Asian and Pacific Islander Youth Violence Prevention Center for the last 10 years, and that's the work that I've been directly involved in this area. But, okay, so this is really corny, but just for acronyms help us remember good approaches, and I say this is sick. And my teenage daughter's like, Mom, really? Nothing worse than a middle-aged mom trying to be cool. CIC. C for context-informed, I for individualized, and C for comprehensive. And let me just give you an example. There's 3 bullying examples that kind of come to mind. My daughter's was in elementary school when they learned about the plantations. So after the plantation lesson, they go to the playground, and one of her friends says, he's the Luna, and you guys are the plantation workers, and it makes them do all these things. And for him, it was play, but she felt really bullied, and if you don't do this, you're not part of the work camp anymore, and you know what I mean? So there's that kind of innocent kind of play bullying that happens. In middle school, one example you often hear is people stealing each other's lunch money or bus money. Another example that comes to mind in high school was a child who, this guy liked this girl, but the girl didn't like him, so he tried to commit suicide. So all his friends blamed her for him trying to commit suicide and then bullied her endlessly. I mean, followed her home from school and everything. So these are 3 very, very different types of bullying situations. And context is really, really important. When you see kids doing something that's an act of bullying, it's not enough to say, don't do that, that's not nice, that's not the right thing to do. It's really to try to understand the context and have the child understand that context and to understand what's right or wrong and all of those kinds of things. And so we have to be able to understand fully the context in order, because some of them are very, very complicated, in order to be able to respond and help that child appropriately. The second is individualized, and this is where Alison Colby, she'll present it at the Keiki Caucus training, has a wonderful framework for teaching tolerance and nonviolence. And she has 5 areas where she feels, and her work has revolved around, in terms of nurturing characteristics in youth so that they would behave in nonviolent ways. So the 5 areas of nurturing are: 1 is empathy, 2, belonging, 3, awareness of one's surroundings, 4, self-awareness, and 5, conflict management and communication skills. And the more I do this work, the more I come back to her kind of diagram of these 5 areas, because a lot of the things, awareness of one's surroundings, how you impact others, how others are doing, seeing from others' point of view, this understanding social dynamics, that's just one example of one of those areas. Those kinds of things are important characteristics for kids to develop, and if we could help them develop those things, then they could navigate, the plantation worker play to the harassment from this guy's friends in much healthier ways. So we need to look at the individual, where their strengths and weaknesses are, and what areas can we help nurture for them to be able to handle these situations in the best way possible. And then the last part was the other C, which is comprehensive. There are 2 types of comprehensiveness that we feel are really important in violence prevention, bullying prevention. 1 is a comprehensiveness in looking at someone's life. And this is where actually Antonia's father, Antonio Alvarez, who's teaching at University of Michigan social work, he takes that kind of ecological model and puts it in this kind of 4 quadrants of your life kind of box diagram. And the 4 quadrants are home and family, 2nd is school, 3rd is peers, and 4th is kind of the neighborhood and community. And he, along with many others who do this work, and the literature that speaks to this work, all say that we need to address all 4 quadrants, all 4 areas of a child's life, and help them understand what's going on in those 4 areas. Because a lot of times kids are so stressed or tensed or up to here, and one little thing can, you know what I mean, shoot them off. But part of it is them understanding what is going on in their life, what is going on in those 4 quadrants, what are the things that are stressing them out, and what are the things that are helping them relax or cope better. If they could understand, and Antonio draws this diagram on a piece of paper. He sits down with a kid, draws a diagram, and puts those 4 things down, and he draws a circle. And he says, what are the things on the outside that cause stress, and what are the things on the inside that help you cope with those situations? So that kind of comprehensiveness is important in working with youth. The other kind of comprehensiveness is if you stack those 4 areas more like planes. So you have your home, your community life, you have your friends, you have school, you have what's happening in the neighborhood and in the community. And as an organization or as someone who's intervening, if we really, really want to lower or decrease bullying, we have to come up with a strategy that affects all 4 areas. And I could talk a little bit more. I don't want to take too much time now, but about one example of how we tried to do that in the Kailua Waimanalo area. But the main point is that, you know, we don't like Saddam Hussein, we're going to bomb Iraq, right? At the societal level, there's a lot of bullying, a lot of violence, right? And at the home level, too, parents are saying, you got to stand up for yourself. Why'd you take that? You better go back and get back in the ring. So kids are hearing these messages at all levels. But then, of course, they're getting in trouble for acting out, right? Those messages. So anyway, that kind of comprehensiveness is important too.
What I really appreciate about what you're saying as well, Karen, is that, I mean, not only are we encouraging this self-reflection on behalf of the students, because you're absolutely right, them taking ownership for some of these behaviors is the key, but we as community members need to do the exact same thing and continuing to model this behavior all the way down from parents and teachers and social workers all the way. I think Sarah Banks can give us a really wonderful example of some of the other aspects. I mean, the thing that is implicit in that chart that my dad draws is culture. But maybe you can make it a little bit more explicit and share with us a little bit about what you've been doing with creating Pono schools.
First, I'd like to say that, you know, children really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's one of the biggest challenges I think we have as educators, is to really honor each child and really listen well, as you say, ho'olohe pono, and that IEPs need to be for every single child. Every single child needs to be looked at with looking at their gifts, looking at their talents, and really encouraging them to, you know, really explore the things that they love doing. A lot of times what they love doing is what they're good at, and the same with us. And for me, you know, you've heard a lot about the 3 R's, the 5 R's. For me, there are 3 R's, and that's relationship, relationship, relationship. And that it's my relationship to who I am and my ohana, my relationship to others, and my relationship to the land, and my relationship to my spiritual source, that which I draw, from. And the culture-based education programs that I've actually been involved with the Center on Disability Studies, and our partner with our wonderful cultural educators, Alulike Inc. I've learned so much in the past 10 years. We've produced quite a few curricula that really bring in culture. And we bring in the Hawaiian culture because the Hawaiian culture is the host culture. And it's our kuleana as people here in the Hawaiian Islands is that we honor the host culture. And with that, it's important to really embrace the best of Hawaiian values and culture. And also, we do look at culture in many different spheres. We all have our own home culture. That is our ethnic roots. It's also, culture is defined. We have a disability culture, we have a gay culture, we have a military culture. I mean, there are different kinds of cultures. But when you talk about home, a lot of it is you know, your family roots, your DNA. And then there's a local culture. We all know about the local culture. Hawaii is infamous for its local culture, and that, you know, the schools are a microcosm of that local culture. And when we talk about how we have learned to live with one another and respect one another, we have challenges. It's not always the best, you know, and yet we do it better than most places. And In the schools, like I said, it is the microcosm. You know, it is looking at the whole child. I can't imagine, I'm not been a parent, but if I was a parent of a child with a disability, I would be freaked about sending my child to school, hearing all these stats. And I think it really, and as we move towards inclusion, you know, that child, I know the parent, and I know many parents that just really want to protect their child and make sure that they get the best and they're treated with dignity. Also, parents of the GLBT youth, the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. A lot of parents don't even know because the kids are dealing with it silently and haven't. But of the ones that do and have accepted, those children really flourish and they have the strength to get through it.
Can you
You know?
describe the campaign that you're working with?
Well, okay, so there are two things. One is I really want to honor Kumulehua Vincent from Keaukaha Elementary. It's one of the schools that we worked with the Kukulu Not Wapo, which was a physical science class curriculum, and it was a culture-based curriculum. I saw the transformation of that elementary school, which is in the Hawaiian Homestead community in Hilo. The transformation of when Kumulehua Vincent took the helm as principal, and he laid a foundation of pono in everything they did at the school. Within a year and a half, that school made AYP. This was a struggling school. This is a school that deals with poverty, deals with so many different issues. It turned everything around. Everything. All the children felt good about who they were. They worked towards being pono. The staff, the teachers, all of the support, all of a sudden, then it mushroomed out, and the community. The community now is a part of the school, and the school is a part of the community. The foundation of Pono shifted everything, and they work on it, and they continue to work on it. When I saw that, I talked with Lehua, and I said, can we do this with other schools? Will this work? And so at that point, it's when I was a Hawaii Civil Rights Commissioner, and I said, let's do a statewide campaign called Eolapono, and let's plant the seed, and and this will be our educational outreach program. And so it was a partnership of the Center on Disability Studies and HCRC, and we just finished our 4th year. And the first 3 years, which is memorialized in this book, are visions of our youth's visions of Pono. There's stories, there's posters, there's videos, all 3 years. Wonderful, wonderful. And it's on, we've got a website which is called Creating Pono Schools. And this ebook, you can download the ebook, but also if you're interested, we're actually going to be printing a new one to incorporate our 4th year, because our 4th year shifted. But anyway, this was our planting the seed, because our state motto is based on Pono. Uamau ke ea, oka'ene ke Pono. The life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. And so, many times people ask, what is Pono? What does Pono mean? And Pono is righteous. But when you're talking about working in the educational school, in the schools, and there's this whole thing about separation of church and state, and the word righteous is such a trigger word for religion, we stay away from the word righteous. And what we do is, it's pretty much living with respect for everyone and in harmony with everything. And that, when you think about that, that's a pretty lofty ideal, but it is something that, if embraced and consciously thinking about how can I grow pono today? How can I be more pono today? It really does shift things. And that's basically our campaign is all about what is it that we want to create in our schools? What are the visions? What kind of school would be one that every child would race to instead of ditch from?
So it's a very, to me, it's a very powerful example of students taking responsibility for their own words and really understanding the message. And again, what we've seen in the research, and certainly what I've seen in the schools, is that peer-to-peer outreach is the most effective outreach. We find that in the mental health field all the time. So I think that's something we need to keep coming back to, and I feel like that video is a wonderful, wonderful example. So thank you for sharing that with us today. I would like to open the floor to questions. I know I want to hear Alan Silva share a little bit, but I think maybe see if there's a few questions before we shift gears again. So please raise a hand if you have a question, and we'll repeat them for the panelists. Yes?
I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. It seems to me that our society does not reflect how I live. If we look at certainly certain situations, the way that we treat each other is really bad, and messages bad or very slow. In some ways, it seems like we're trying to do those counter that culture is.
So I'm going to repeat the question because we have Olelo. We're blessed with Olelo here today. So the question is, what are we going to do with the fact that our anti-bullying movement isn't reflected in our larger cultural values, or at least in what we're showing our kids? Is this a bottom-up approach?
I think it has to be. Most of my work is actually not legislation, it's community building. 90% I would say of the work I do. And that's why I hope that Alan can actually do a presentation. I think it's important that whether it's in the classroom or many of you are associated with various community service organizations, we can actually start practicing what was mentioned, Sarah, pono, individualizing every person's circumstance, but living aloha basically. And that's why this was made for you. So I think there's a way to do it. I think every child actually has it within them. Every person has these attributes. We just need to nurture them on a very regular basis, in the home, in the classroom, in the work setting, and in the community.
So it is building from the bottom, right? I mean, building from within and taking it out slowly, and hoping that we don't continue to see that in our mass media, that we don't continue to see that as projecting our values out, right? Because it won't be. You want to add anything else, Karen?
I just have to say one thing as an educator. I think what kind of curriculum we infuse into our educational system is really important, and that's where a lot of change can begin. I've always advocated a peace and conflict studies course within the curriculum that starts at, it takes different forms at different grade levels, but includes conflict mediation, conflict resolution, communication skills, empathy building, and all kinds of things. Because I think what we do, what happens in Washington, D.C., in terms of our national policies is something, that needs to change too, but we're here, and we affect what we can change around us. So I think curriculum reform is really important, as well as what kinds of things we put on our media, and that's why I applaud Olelo and other media organizations who really try to put out a different perspective and a critical perspective, and one that promotes peace.
Thank you. Yeah.
And for me, the largest stakeholder is the youth. And what I feel we really need to do is guide our youth to be on board, to create that Pono school, to create, that environment that really does honor everyone. And for me, there's several another thing that we haven't even talked about is that so many of our schools now have school gardens. There is so much peace and pono that comes out of these school garden curriculum. It blew me away. I mean, we did not write that in our grant. I was going to bring in media technology and get the kids all excited about video, and they were the ones that said, "We want a school garden." I said, "Really? Okay." And so we started a school garden, and the transformation of where the kids found their pono was turning their hands towards the soil to actually start making things grow. And then they got it. They got the metaphor as I malama these plants, and these plants will nourish me. They realize that I have to malama myself. I have to malama others, and we all can grow. And there are wonderful programs, and Aina in the schools is very important. Many of the parents out there, community, support your school, the schools that have school gardens, because powerful ways of kids exploring how to work well with one another, how to find their safe place.
I think not only that, but I mean, I've recently been hearing stories about how the food that we eat impacts our behavior. So reading about alternative schools that are feeding their kids from their gardens, and they actually see a decrease in negative behavior in the schools. They see less violent outbursts, they see less bullying, and that's all coming through the fresh foods that they're eating at school. And I think that's a very, very different approach to this healthy food in school campaign.
Let me just give one more example, and I want to tip my hat to Francine Honda, principal of Kailua High School. One of the tensions at the school was kind of ethnic tensions, and we see that at different schools, especially with new immigrants and old-timers. And so they started an ethnic studies, and we helped them start an ethnic studies class so that they could deepen cross-cultural understanding, and now it's a requirement for everyone at the school. So, and that seems to be showing to reduce some of the risk factors for violence.
I'm also aware of Pahoa Elementary School, where they actually implemented in 2008 OS. I'm not too sure if you folks have heard of this program, but they basically have trained not only the children and the faculty, but the entire community. The parents are very engaged. Every stakeholder group is involved. And the other area, I know on Maui, there's also a lot of initiative with regards to not only anti-bullying, but just, I don't know if we would call it cultural. It's just being kind to each other and actually taking care of each other.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention Olweus as well. It is a curriculum. It's spelled OLWEUS. If you Google it, you will find the website. And it is amazing curriculum that reflects much of what Sarah was talking about. And as Senator Chan Oakland said, it looks at the student, the parents, the school, and the community. The success of the implementation at Pahoa Elementary is really encouraging. The woman I've spoken to on the Big Island, her name is Audrey Inaba. She's now on Maui and attempting to implement it there. So this is just one example. I mean, I think all of us can find ways to support the community and to support the schools. You know, when I first started, I didn't have a clue of what I was doing. And, you know, now I feel like I've accomplished something. I'm sure many of you have as well. And I think we're not going to change the culture. That's difficult to do. But what we can do is we can really support students. We can make safe places for them. We can make schools safer places for them. We not only can do that, but we have a responsibility to do that. And I'm just hoping that maybe that's something that comes of this discussion today.
Thank you. Yes. So the question was to clarify the aspects of the bill that actually made it forward, right? I mean, the HB 688.
Both bills, which was a part of the Keiki Caucus package, original content included making it a misdemeanor in certain cases. What came out that the legislature actually passed, that the governor will be signing, is basically saying that the DOE and the Board of Education needs to monitor very closely the policies that they have implemented and then be able to report that. So it still does not create a penalty of any sort. I know the law enforcement and the prosecutor's office really liked that aspect of it, but others did not. So we do need to look at, one, to me as a community, the prevention and an education part of it, and to integrate it very naturally in our curriculum and other settings. And then in the cases where it's pretty severe, and folks, those that are bullying or cyberbullying go through some kind of, I don't even want to say program, just understanding more of what the repercussions of their actions have been. If they still don't get it, then I think there needs to be something more significant in place for those cases. So we are going to work on legislation again this summer so that we can introduce something that more people will be supportive of next year.
Many schools have adopted sort of an empathy building program for students who are caught as perpetrators of bullying, and so they work with them on developing those coping skills and that empathy rather than the immediate misdemeanor penalty or suspension from school. I do want to show you quickly the form to report bullying through the DOE. It's hard to find. If you have questions, you can call us and we can help you navigate it. This is only an introductory step, but this is the formal process that you have to go through to report a bullying claim through the Department of Ed. So this is where you find it. And again, you can contact us if you have more questions. I'm also going to put up a few national resources for you.
The other thing I failed to mention was we have something called the Peer Education Program, almost in every school, I believe, and that's something we've tried to work towards over the years because peers really have an impact from elementary on up to high school in impacting their own classmates. So I think that's really, really important that we preserve that funding. I know things have been cut, but that is a very significant program that has had an impact in many ways.
I want to introduce Alan Silva to talk about his approach to that program very quickly. Did you want to add something before then?
I just wanted to add a couple other venues in the school system. Student leadership councils, community service projects, service learning projects. All these are a part of the student activities. And that's one of the things where we're going to lock into for the fifth year of the Aola Pono campaign for creating a safer Pono school is having, instead of the community service project being out there in the community, let's start in our own backyard first. Let's do something that really makes our school, a safe and nurturing environment. And we can do others, but that's going to be a part of what we do. And student leaders, athletes, and that's another big thing. All our athletic teams do service projects, and they can be the ones that do something to give back to the school to make it a safe and Pono school.
So Alan Silva is a teacher at Farrington High School. He's also a coach, so he's going to bring us some of that perspective. And we only have a couple more minutes, so I just wanted to let him share a little bit about how he's integrated this program into his curriculum. If you're leaving, please fill out an evaluation form, and we'll keep going as we close out. Thank you, Alan.
Aloha. I said aloha. Thank you for inviting me. I came here to support Senator Chan Oakland because she does so much in the community for us. She said, "Will you sit on the panel?" I said, "I don't have to sit on the panel." Okay, George. Yeah. But I grew up in Camp Ford housing. Then one day my dad said, we're moving the family to Beverly, to Kailo. And went to Kailo Elementary, Kailo Intermediate, Kailo High School. Went on to Shalmanan University. And yes, I played basketball. And went on to UH to get my counseling degree. I've been a teacher, a counselor, a resource teacher. And now I'm back in the classroom at Farrington High School. Right, Mr. Oyama? Ron Oyama, our VP. Ron, wave. Okay. And we have a lot of people that help at Farrington. We also have adult friends for you, Debbie Spencer and McKay Swanky in the audience. I knew they would be here. Okay? And we have a lot of supports at Farrington. As far as the PEP program, PEP stands for Peer Education Program. Years ago, I was the first director for PEP. But when I took the job as a director, it wasn't called Peer Education Program. It was called the Peer Assistance Program. And I was the director. So my first meeting, I'll never forget it. I went to my first meeting and I started to get harassed or bullied. Okay? And he said, Alan Silva, he's our new PEP director. And so people started laughing. I started to see the ladies in the audience. And a couple of nurses were in the audience. The second meeting I went to the next day, Alan Silva, our new PEP director. And people started laughing. It's like, wait a minute. After I did my presentation, I turned to one of my friends and she was a nurse. I said, what's going on? 2 presentations. Dr. Ed Margulies introduces me as the PAP director, and people are laughing. I mean, what, something on my face was going on. I said, Alan, PAP. PAP. Oh my God. PAP smear, Alan, got it. So I changed the name of the program to the Peer Education Program. Real quick. And at Farrington, we do address many teen problems. Bullying is one of them. We also have the mediation problem. Allison Colby in the Teen Center, she works a lot with the students on bullying and kind of mediates that problem. And it's just amazing. How do I address that problem in my classroom with my students, even on the basketball court as the head coach at Farrington High School boys? Simple. My grandmother told me a long time ago, she said, son, don't ever forget aloha. I said, what? My grandmother was a Hawaiian lady, spoke fluent Hawaiian, hula teacher. She says, don't forget aloha. I said, Grandma, I will never forget her. She sits right next to me in class and she's pretty cute. She said, not the girl in your class. The word aloha. And don't ever forget the ha in aloha. The ha is the breath of life. When you share aloha, you give the breath of life to everyone. Remember that what goes wrong comes wrong. Remember, Lord said, okay, Grandma. So all the years of teaching, I get into my classroom. And all teachers, we have rules that we set with the class. And I set my class rules. And some of you got this handout. If you need a copy, Senator Chun can get you more. Okay? It was written by a very wise Hawaiian lady by the name of Pilai Paki. A-L-O-H-A. These are my class rules. When the kids get to my class, I have a big poster. I said, these are our rules. This is how we treat each other. This is how we treat each other. And when we talk about bullying, this is the foundation. Aloha. I didn't write it. Pilai Paki wrote it. It's also acknowledged as a state law. Hawaii Revised Statutes 5-7.5. The first A should give a very unique Hawaiian word followed by an English meaning to clarify our understanding. The first A is akahai. Everybody say akahai. Very good. It means kindness expressed with tenderness. L, lokahi. It means unity expressed with harmony. Next letter is olo, which means to be agreeable expressed with pleasantness. Next letter H, ha'a. Humility, to express with modesty. And the last Hawaiian word she gave to us was ahonui. Patience, perseverance. Okay? Basically, it says never give up. These are our class rules. My basketball team, when they make the team, we're going to the locker room. No, we don't talk about offense or defense. I write a law on the board. I say, guys, this is how we treat each other. This is how we treat everybody else too. Akai, kindness. We play this game with each other. We treat each other with kindness. See, when you talk about bullying, what is going on? And someone said earlier, said, what do we do in our society doesn't practice this, what we're talking about? You folks are already making a difference by being here. Okay? The society is going to make the difference. Right now, real quickly, I want you to turn to the person on your left and right, and please tell them congratulations for making a difference, because you guys are making a difference. Turn to the person on your left and right and tell them congratulations.
Congratulations for making a difference.
Thank you, you too. I'm going to play this song real quick. I need a cordless mic.
Yeah. Grab that one. I'm going to close them out while we're going.
Okay, I'm going to close right now, but before I close, the students in my class, whatever teen issue we're dealing with in PEP, it could be drug prevention, teen pregnancy, bullying, violence, gangs. Students have to address all these problems with the concept of aloha. And every morning when they come into the class, they have to write an aloha log. What do you mean aloha log? Coach, what are you talking about aloha log? What have you done in the last 24 hours to share aloha at home, in school, or the community? In the beginning, my students were just like, real couple notes. I said, no, DOE, standards, I want you to write. So they would have to write paragraphs, some of them would write pages. These are our class rules. The 3 R's. Relationship, relationship, relationship. I went to a meeting when I was a resource teacher years ago, and this guy was talking about rigor, relevance, relationship. I said, brother, you got it backwards. Start with relationship. And about 6 months later, he redid his notes on it, and he started with relationship. My students, I challenged them. And one of our assignments, I said, write a song. And these kids use their gifts, and they wrote a song. And it's basically on Akahai, Lokai, Ulu'ulu, Ha'aha, Ahunui. And it's going to be going on YouTube soon, and they're going to sell it, but all the profits they're going to give to Japan. I'm going to play it briefly for you, but you know what? You want to find out more what the classes do at Farrington, go to kitv.com and go click on the left-hand side of the screen below Marketplace. This is Hawaii MVP. Robert K. Kala, our sports guy, came into my classroom and he videotaped my class. And he even took the aloha message to the basketball court. Because at Farrington, we won the state championship 2 times in the last 3 years. I said, Coach, what's your secret? I said, I got help and aloha. I'm going to play the song and close.
So we're going to actually play it as we exit so we can give people a chance to hear. Yeah, thank you, Alan Silva. Thank you for giving us another example of how we take it in to the classrooms and to ourselves. I want to thank everyone for being here today and helping us discuss this, this very important, very timely topic. I know everybody has more to think about and more to say. I want to thank each of the panelists, so please give them all some aloha. And please remember to take some resources as you go. And we are going to play the song as we exit, so you can all have some aloha in your mind as you leave. Thank you all for being here today. Mahalos. There are evaluations on your chair. We would love you to fill them out before you go. Thank you all.
This song I'm going to play for you right now, and you're going to guys. Keep in mind, this is done by 2 of my students, 2 Samoan students, in grades 10 and grade 11.